Marc Chagall is dead at 97, one of modern art's giants, by John Russell, March the 29th, 1985. Marc Chagall, for 75 years a prominent member of the international art scene, the originator of images that had an almost universal potency and master of large-scale commissions that have left a permanent mark on the cities in which they were located, died yesterday at his home in Saint-Paul-de-Vence, France. He was 97 years old. During the second half of this century, Chagall had arrived at something close to ubiquity. The first thing that we see when we step onto the piazza at Lincoln Center are the huge murals that he made for the Metropolitan Opera in 1965, his Four Seasons mosaic for the First National Bank in Chicago, his mosaics and tapestries for the Knesset in Jerusalem, his ceiling painting for the Paris Opera, the museum of his biblical paintings that bear his name in Nice, his stained glass windows for the United Nations headquarters in New York, the cathedrals of Metz and of Reims in France, the Fraum Unster in Zurich and the Hadassah Hebrew University in Jerusalem. All these have been granted landmark status. If to them we add the paintings that can be found in almost every museum in the developed world, the private commissions, the graphic works that he produced by the hundreds, the stage designs and the book illustration that he never failed to produce on demand, it will be clear that, at the very least, Marc Chagall left his mark on the world. It should also be said that he had an enormous constituency, one that overran all boundaries of age, creed, social status, or place of origin. Though he was not without his detractors, Chagall's sense of fantasy, his habitually gorgeous and colors, and his gift for an immediately accessible poignancy won admirer wherever his work was shown. His unconventional world was a brightly colored melange of animals, flowers, people, embracing lovers, birds and fish playing musical instruments, nymphs, satyrs, winged female figures, Jewish and Christian symbols, vignettes of clustered roofs and violins with angels' wings. These objects rarely, if ever, bore their natural hues. Cows were likely to be blue, horses green, people red. This fantasy universe, sometimes poignantly sad but more often laughingly joyous, was childlike in its apparent simpleness, yet strangely sophisticated in its perceptiveness. It was, moreover, a world without gravity, in which objects appeared to float in desperate juxtaposition, while achieving a remarkable total harmony and rhythm. Chagall expressed his antique imaginings in oils, pastels, watercolors, gouaches, lithographs, etchings, murals, clay, glass, and stone. "I work in whatever medium likes me at the moment," he once said. Marc Chagall was born Miloš Chagall on July 7, 1887, in Vitebsk, Russia. Like many another city within the Russian Pale of Settlement, Vitebsk had a large and self-contained Jewish population. Alike in religious, social and cultural terms, they were a people set apart. Religious festivals, fasts, and dietary rules were strictly observed. In their dress, likewise, Jewish within the Pale were unmistakable, nor were they allowed to travel without a permit. It was from this milieu, at once isolated and intensely alive, that Marc Chagall drew not only his awareness of the injustice and inequalities of human life, but a vast repertory of symbol and allusion, ritual and bright humor, aspiration and irrepressible feeling. By the time he got to St. Petersburg as an art student by 1906, he had the subject matter of a lifetime at his fingers' ends, and he was to be sustained by it throughout the next 8 decades. To get to St. Petersburg at all was difficult, in that no Jew from the Pale was allowed to settle there unless he was registered as a domestic servant. Luckily for Chagall, there was in St. Petersburg a moneyed Jewish community that did a great deal for the cultural life of the city. Not only did a member of this enlightened group pretend to the authorities that Chagall was in his service as a footman, but it was thanks to another Jewish patron, Max Wienever, that Chagall was able in 1911 to go to study in Paris. Meanwhile, Chagall enrolled in 1906 in the Imperial School for the Protection of New Art in St. Petersburg, which was run at that time by Nicholas Roerich, now best known for having designed sets and costumes for the first production of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. Roerich was interested enough in the young Chagall to secure him exemption from military service and a small but indispensable scholarship. Influenced by theatre. In 1908, Chagall moved to Zvansteva School, then co-directed by Leon Bakst, soon to be famous the world over for his design for Diaghilev's ballet Rassis, and by Mstislavs Dobutsky, a stage designer and book illustrator of high quality. It was above all through Dobutsky that Chagall came to know the avant-garde Russian theatre of the day, in which poets and painters were welcome to play a part. In developing his abrupt, foreshortened, topsy-turvy form of narrative art, Chagall owed much to the example not only of the other painters, but of Meyerhold, Evrenov, and all the other progressive theatre directors. Himself destined to do much of his best work for the stage, Chagall grew up with theatre all around him. Even his future wife, Bella Rosenfeld, was attending lectures by Konstantin Stanislavski when he first met her. By 1910, Chagall, at 22, had 2 paintings in an exhibition at the offices of Apollon, a leading art magazine in St. Petersburg, and in the fall of that year he asked Bakst if he could help to paint his scenery for a Diaghilev's ballet called Narcisse, but fundamentally he was ready to take on a new challenge, and he persuaded his patron to take him to a first visit to Paris, where he arrived in 1911. Success in Paris. Chagall in Paris had an almost instantaneous success, mating his exotic and deeply felt subject matter with the new modes of pictorial structure that he learned in Paris, above all from Robert Delaunay. He gave his autobiographical fantasies the status of epic. Paintings like I and the Village of 1911, now in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, had an imaginative power, a compositional virtuosity, a firm basis, in fact, that caused widespread enthusiasm even in an era of great painting. Before long, Chagall was taken up by Guillerme Apollinaire, the foremost French poet of the day, and through him he came to know Herwald Walden, dealer, editor, and artistic impresario, in Berlin, thereby in a short order adding another capital to his list of conquests. It was another French poet, Blaise Cendrars, who completed the cosmopolitan education of Marc Chagall and turned him into a full-fledged member of the international avant-garde. By the summer of 1914, no more than 7 years after his first arrival in St. Petersburg as an unknown student, Chagall had painted many of the pictures by which he is now best known, and had shown in Paris, Berlin, and Moscow, under the best auspices. His imperious imagination had cut through every pictorial convention, and he had proved that a poet in paint could endure bad times and deal with bad people and yet come through intact. In June 1914, he went back from Berlin to his native Vitebsk, where his fiancée Bella Rosenberg was waiting for him. Caught in Russia by the outbreak of World War I, he had no choice but to stay indefinitely. He and Bella were married in 1915, thereby setting the seal on what was already a love affair of legendary stature. Their daughter Ida was born in 1916. The painter welcomed the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, not only because it made him, as a Jew, a full citizen, but also because it recognized him as an artist. Indeed, he was made Commissar for Art in Vitebsk, where he busily went about trying to make the average man into a painter. Organized art schools. His program of organizing art schools, a museum and exhibition was frustrated not by communists in favor of traditional art styles, but by avant-garde non-objective artists, above all Kazimir Malevich. Eventually, he redesigned his Vitebsk post and went to Moscow in 1920, where he did the murals for the Kamerny State Jewish Theater and designed sets and costumes for its productions. Affronted finally by the official avant-garde, Kandinsky, Rodchenko, and Malevich, that placed him in the poorly paid third class of artists, Chagall left the Soviet Union in 1922 for Berlin and Paris. Among the paintings he left behind were Over the Town and Wedding, which, with other of his works, have been kept by the Soviet government. Famous but penniless. In the West, he found himself famous but penniless. Famous because the paintings he had left in Berlin had been sold. Penniless because the million Reichsmark they had fetched were worthless in the post-war inflation. Chagall at 36 was welcomed as an idol by the Surrealists, who saw their art's characteristics heralded in such pre-war paintings as Paris Through the Window, and in the artist's double-headed man, in his dream imagery and the daring way he juxtaposed animals and men. With Chagall alone, the metaphor made his triumphant return into modern painting, said André Breton, the theoretician of Surrealism. Had to learn etching. Fortuitously, Ambroise Voillard, the Paris art dealer, commissioned Chagall to illustrate Gogol's Dead Soul. For this, he was obliged to learn the art of etching, at which he proved enormously adept. The incisive fancy of his illustrations was a great success and led to a commission to do La Fontaine's Fable. This, too, was a triumph. His next commission was for the Bible, for which he did 105 plates between 1931 and 1956, when the edition was published. These are remarkable for their informality. No halos are worn, for instance, and for their precision of detail. When the Germans overran France in 1940-1941, the artist was brought to the United States by the Emergency Rescue Committee. He was here for 7 years, for most of them living in an apartment off the Fifth Avenue. He never quite became accustomed to the city, which he called this Babylon, and he never mastered English. With Leonid Massin, the choreographer and a fellow Russian, Chagall designed the costumes for and sets for a ballet theater production of Aleko and for the Firebird. Two of his paintings in this period reflected his war-induced pessimism about the world. Yellow Crucible, painted in 1943, portrays in yellow and green a burning Vitebsk, a sinking ship and a ladder being raised to remove Jesus from the cross. The other, Falling Angel, depicts a world in violent disorder by showing a rabbi fleeing with the Torah and a bleeding angel. Wife died in 1944. In 1944, Chagall's personal life was shattered by the death of his wife, who was his mentor and his guide, and for 9 months he refused to paint. All dressed in white or all in black, she has long floated across my canvases, guiding my art. He said at the time, I finished neither painting nor engraving without asking her yes or no. When the painter returned to France 4 years later, it was with Virginia Haggard MacNeil, by whom he had a son, David. Mrs. MacNeil, a Briton, left him after a while for an older man, befitting to Chagall's ego that he took in the endured silence. But he soon met Valentin Brodsky, a divorced Russian who became his second wife. Thrived on Klachter Vava, as her husband nicknamed her, put order into his life and served as a buffer against importunate art lovers. His studio, though, she was never able to organize, for the artist insisted that he had thrived on clutter. There were racks of canvases, art books strewn about, uncleaned palettes, photos of relatives, and postcards pinned on the wall. A samovar bubbled and a phonograph gave out classical music as he toiled. It was his private world. From it came such paintings as The Lovers of Vance, a boy and a girl tenderly embracing, with Vance in the background. Elegant living style. As his wealth expanded, so did his living style. He had a house on the fashionable Ile Saint-Louis in Paris, and a large villa at Saint-Paul-de-Vence in the south of France. In New York he put up at the Essex House. Amid this elegance he was something of an oddity, for he habitually dressed in baggy trousers and shapeless sweaters. Chagall gave off an air of meekness, which concealed a hare-headed shrewdness about his own worth in the marketplace. What confused those who dealt with him was his physical resemblance to one of his own exotic images. In young adulthood, for instance, he looked like Harpo Marx, with his puckish face, large eyes, and a crown of curls. In old age, he seemed a winsome elf. In his last years, a virtually universal celebrity came his way. He was awarded the International Prize for Engraving at the Venice Biennale. He did stained glass windows for the church at Assy, France, and sets and costumes for Daphne and Chloe for the Paris Opera. He went on to design 2 new windows for the Metz Cathedral and 12 for the synagogue of the Hadassah Hebrew University Medical Center in Jerusalem. In 1973, he revisited Moscow and Leningrad after an interval of more than 50 years, and an exhibition of his prints was held at the Treitkanov Gallery in Moscow, working glass extolled. In the United States, his windows can be seen at the United Nations headquarters and in the Union Church at Tarrytown, New York. His work in glass, which he mastered in his 60s with the help of Charles Marc of the Atelier Jacques Simon in Reims, was remarkable for its virtuosity, its adaptation to commissions of no matter what kind and size, and its renewed poetic sensibility. Toward the end of his life, he also designed 3 huge Gobelins tapestries on Old Testament themes for Knesset of Israel. With his work, and as with other art, Chagall considered himself a rugged individual, strengthened in the belief that his creation would outlive their critics. If I create with my heart, almost all my intentions remain, he asserted. If it is with my head, almost nothing. An artist must not fear to be himself, to express only himself. If he is absolutely and entirely sincere, what he says and does will be acceptable to others. Represented for many years by the Pierre Matisse Gallery in New York, Chagall in his last phase had exhibitions the world over, but perhaps the crown of his career in that regard was the full-scale retrospective exhibition initiated by the Royal Academy of Arts in London this past winter. It will be seen at the Philadelphia Museum of Art from May 12th through July 7th, and it is likely to prove a fitting memorial to one of the longest and most productive careers in the history of modern art.